All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Altcoin Daily. My name is Aaron. If you live in the United States or have any interest in what's happening in the United States, we have a major problem on our hands, and billionaire investor Ray Dalio has just put himself on record. He says the world is going to change in shocking ways over the next 5 years, and if you don't prepare yourself, you are going to come out on the bottom. Now, me personally, I want to be ahead of the curve. So in this video, although his original interview is over an hour long, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know in the next 2 to 3 minutes. And if you appreciate that, give the video a like. This is Altcoin Daily, so we're also going over Bitcoin and cryptocurrency news. But we're going to start here. This is something that the mainstream media does not report. If they do, they don't give you any sort of context. Let's find out the details. Ray Dalio, first of all, he's no radical idealist. This guy, by all accounts, is smart, traditional money. He's no idealist. He's no radical. But in his frequent writings and media appearances, the veteran investor consistently calls for Americans to rewrite their long-standing contract with capitalism so that it's fairer and more generous to more people. Otherwise, he predicts life in the U.S. could become more difficult, suggesting that mountainous debt that stunts economic growth will happen, fewer opportunities for ordinary citizens to get ahead financially, and a worldwide lack of trust in the U.S. dollar that diminishes Americans' purchasing power and could lower your standard of living. First of all, before we continue, don't shoot the messenger. I'm not coming down on capitalism. Ray Dalio has benefited from capitalism more than almost any other person on the planet. In fact, he's the founder of Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest hedge fund firm. It's made him a billionaire. So if anybody understands the benefits, if anybody's profited from capitalism, this guy right here. But the fact that he says if we continue down this path with the money printing, with the debt, we're going to have all sorts of problems. I think we need to hear him out, hear what he has to say, and then you can comment below if you think you want to keep the current system or whatever you want to do. So he says, capitalism and capitalists are good at increasing and producing productivity to increase the size of the economic pie. However, capitalists don't divide the pie very well. So today, the capitalist system, the foundation of the U.S. economy, is not working effectively nor efficiently enough for all. Do you agree with this? Is capitalism working? Or do we have a problem with the money printing and debt and the like? Well, let's find out, because I thought, he gives historical examples. I thought what he had to say was pretty revealing. Capitalism produces large wealth gaps that produce opportunity gaps which threaten the system, a system that has been and actually still is key to the health and success of U.S. businesses, workers, governments, investors alike. He says that this system has worked for us, but right now he's losing trust in this centralized system. Unless the U.S. takes steps to make systematic repairs designed to provide greater opportunity for more Americans to achieve personal growth and financial security, the consequences will likely be painful for this country. And here is actually where Dalio begins his interview. So without further ado, let's find out exactly what he has to say. MarketWatch says, you have written and spoken about 3 big domestic and international problems facing the U.S. over the next 5 to 10 years, and how a failure to address these challenges would threaten Americans' standing in the world. What are these 3 pressing problems? Ray says, I look at it mechanically, like a doctor looking at a disease. So again, he's not interested in, you're emotional, oh, America, we need this. He's just taking a look, from an unbiased point of view, a doctor looking at a disease. He says, if asked what the issue is here, I would say that there's a certain type of disease that has certain patterns which are timeless and universal, and the United States is broadly following that progression. So it's not a United States problem, it's a problem in any centralized empire. There are 3 problems that are coming together, so it's important to understand them individually and how they collectively make a bigger problem. There is a money and credit cycle problem, a wealth and values gap problem, and an emerging great power challenging the existing dominant power problem. So did you catch that? The three problems he says you have to understand individually to understand the greater problem. Money and credit cycle problem. Do you agree? Do you disagree? A wealth and values gap problem. Do you agree or do you disagree? And then a greater power challenging the United States. What's going on is an economic downturn together with a large wealth gap and a rising power of China challenging the existing power of the United States. It's a fact that there has been a weakening of the competitive advantages of the United States over the last couple of decades. That's a fact. For example, the US lost a lot of education advantage relative to other countries. Our share of the world GDP is reduced. The wealth gap has increased, which has contributed to our political and social polarization. The US is in the late stages of debt cycle and money cycle in which they're producing a lot of debt and money printing. That's a problem. As a reserve currency status, the US dollar is still dominant, though it's being threatened by its central bank printing money and increasing debt production problem. Again, this is a guy who has every reason to benefit from the current system, coming out and saying, unless something changes, things are different from how they used to be, and in the next 5 years are going to be very different unless we do something. So MarketWatch asks him, focusing on money and credit problems, excessive debt can be a killer for businesses and families, but most people don't seem to recognize that debt plays havoc with their country's finances as well. Government runs the money printing press, which buys time, but eventually something's got to give. And this is what Dalio says to that. If you look at history, for example, the Dutch Empire, the British Empire, both empires, biggest of their time, both experienced the creation of debt and money printing, less educational advantages, greater internal wealth conflicts, greater challenges from rival countries. Every country has stress tests. If you look at British history, the development of rival countries led them to lose their competitive advantage. Their finances were bad because they accumulated a lot of debt. So after World War II, those trends went against them. They had the Suez Canal incident, and then they were no longer a world power, and the British pound is no longer a reserve currency. These diseases almost always play out the same. Well, we're not going to get to these other interesting cryptocurrency stories. I promise I didn't do that on purpose. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we will cover everything you need to know about. But let me give you my takeaway from this story, the TLDR. Trust in centralized authorities is at an all-time low. The money printing machine is at an all-time high. The wealth gap and just the perception of disparity is getting higher and higher every year. A peaceful solution to opt out of this messed up system, which also can make you rich possibly, is Bitcoin. People are realizing this. People are realizing, one, the problem, that trust in centralized authorities is an all-time low, and people are realizing, two, the solution, which is Bitcoin. Now, it could be Bitcoin and other things. It could be Bitcoin and other DeFi things that are on Ethereum. That remains to be seen. The one thing that, in my personal opinion, my belief is a sure thing is Bitcoin. And you are smart money if you realize this now. Ray Dalio is smart money. He realizes this now. And with that being said, I will see you tomorrow.